How's it going, everybody? Wayne here, and today I'm here with Tom. I thought I'd do a short series on game collectors around me in Japan. So the first one I'm going to show you here is Tom. Tom, how you doing today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me.
To start off, I'm going to ask him a couple questions. How long have you been in Japan?
I've been in Japan a little over 2 years now, so it hasn't been too bad.
2 years? So what made you decide to start collecting?
Well, so as a child, I really didn't have any of the video game systems growing up. I had to live like vicariously through friends, and a lot of them would have all this cool stuff, and they would go to Blockbuster and rent all these new games. So when I got of age to get a job, I just dived right into it, and I've been collecting ever since.
We live in Japan, so what would you say your best pickups in Japan are?
So I got really lucky, and I found it's an Xbox 360, and it's the game Alan Wake. And there's a company called Colorware who makes these very limited edition Xbox 360s that get given away in either prizes or press and stuff like that. This particular one, I've seen it back in 2011. Unfortunately, the tsunamis, obviously wiped out a lot of stuff in Japan, and they were doing charity auctions for these. And this is one of those particular systems. I've seen numbers out there, like maybe 10 of these in the world. I don't know if that number is accurate. It's very, very scarce information. But I picked that up here locally at a very decent rate.
So with the collection so big, what would you say is your favorite game or item in your collection?
So my favorite game is by far Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. But my favorite item in my collection is actually Super Mario Sunshine for the Nintendo GameCube. I have a lot of really, really cool stuff, but the reason that this stands out is once I got that job to be able to start collecting, I bought a GameCube, and I didn't have any money to buy a game, and I eventually turned around and got this, and I often consider this the first game to start the collection that I have today.
Alright, last question before we get to the game room. If you could add anything to your collection today, what would it be?
So there's actually two things I would love to add to my collection. There's many things, but two things that stand out. And as I mentioned, Super Mario World is my all-time favorite game. So to find a mint in-box with a manual copy of that would be fantastic. Normally, because that game was a pack-in game, you don't see too many boxes for it. And when you do, it's the Player's Choice version, where I would like the standard black box version without the Player's Choice. And then the other one is one of my favorite franchises on the Super Nintendo is Joe and Mac. So I would love to get the box and manual for Joe and Mac 2.
That's Tom, everybody.
Yep.
And now it's time to check out his game room. Let's do it. This is your N64 collection. Now this is the entire N64 library from the US, right?
Yes. Yep, all 296 games complete in box. This took a long time to actually accomplish. Well, kind of fast, 2.5 years, but in terms of like the condition I wanted and stuff, it seemed like it took forever. That was me actively pursuing it almost daily for 2.5 years before I was able to complete the set. You got some, obviously, your big heavy hitters like, your Clay Fighter Sculpture Cut. That's one a lot of people have trouble with. And then you got some cool oddball stuff in here, like this was like a little plush doll inside of here. If you would have reserved Donkey Kong 64, this is still factory sealed, so I've actually never got to mess around with it in there. And then the coolest new addition is this pretty rare variant as Gauntlet Legends. This was a Kmart exclusive from what I understand, and it came with the little Gauntlet figurine inside there. There are more figurines, but those were given away with the Dreamcast games, and the only ones that was ever included with N64 one was this guy right here. So if you ever see one of these show up and it has a different figurine in there, then that's not the original figurine that was included. Here's the rest of the N64 stuff. Another one that's pretty hard to come by is the International Superstar Soccer 2000. These are pretty common in a sense with the Spanish writing in the back. but with the English writing, they're a lot less common. So this is a hard one to find in decent shape, and that's one you should probably look out for early if you decide to go for the set. The only other game to do like little windows, kind of like the Gauntlet, was Micro Machines. And there's a handful of these, but there's no actual confirmed listing out there of how many different variants of this there are. Look at the Super Nintendo stuff right now. I still have a long ways to go. There's so many titles I want to add to this collection, but there's some decent ones in here. Batman Returns at the beginning is one of my favorite Super Nintendo games. Really good beat 'em up. You had Contra, Alien Wars down there. Joe and Mac, of course. I love this game. Like I just mentioned, I'm trying to get the sequel to that box. I have a loose copy, but boxed, still got a ways to go before I find that at a decent price and mint. Pretty much hard to do. This was pretty cool. This is the Death and Return of Superman. This is a pretty cool beat 'em up as well. This one's kind of jumped up in price. I don't want to say recently. I think it's been up there, but I was in Tokyo of all places. They had all Japanese games, and they just had this one North American Super Nintendo game just sitting there for 6,000 yen, which was about $50 at the time. So I was really happy to add that to my collection. I talked about getting Super Mario World. There was a company called Time Walk Games that did homebrews and stuff like that. So this is Super Mario World Return to Dinosaur Land. It's a sequel, and I guess in a sense made by the fans, reusing a lot of the assets from the first game. It's extremely difficult.
Moving on to NES Complete in Box. This is a pretty impressive Complete in Box collection. Now, you bought these all in one lot, correct?
Yes, actually. I started building up my N64 collection, and then my Super Nintendo was starting to grow as well. And at the time, I had about 12 original Nintendo games complete in box, so I'm like, I have to do something about this. And opportunity arose where a guy was, unfortunately, needed the money, and he was selling off his entire lot that he's been collecting since 1999. And I purchased all one lot. I originally bought the whole thing leading up to about right here, and then a couple months later he reached out to me again, asked me if I wanted the Konami Silver Box collection. So I said yeah, sure. So I got the complete North American Silver Box collection. I guess there's some Silver Box games like Silver or Silent Service that we got, but like in the European PAL territory they had a Silver Box. And then I think one of the Ninja Turtle games was Silver Box, so I don't know why they were hit and miss with it, but the American version's all right there.
Alright, now this is the original PS1 US version.
All the PS1 North American games are here. I don't have the full set. That's probably a task I'm not willing to accomplish. That's such a high rate of games that they released for it. But the PS1 and the Super Nintendo are like probably two of my favorite systems. A lot of really, like most of my childhood memories are wrapped up in these two systems. Going back to You Just Passed It Up was the Duke Nukem game, and then Army Men 3 were some of the ones I really enjoyed. Need for Speed High Stakes right here. I don't know how well the game holds up nowadays, but that one was really fun as well. And you got your Toomba. You're going to get down here a little bit at the end, and you'll see the Worms franchise, which is really awesome. So Worms Armageddon. This is one of my all-time favorite series. They still make them till today. There's a company called Team 17 who's been pumping them out. So you can go all the way up until like the PS4 and Xbox One and still purchase these games. Okay, Grace Hits Twisted Metal 2. This was another excellent game. Car combat, destruction. This genre has really died off, unfortunately.
And these are all the loose cartridges.
Yep.
Loose Super Nintendo.
So for most of my years collecting, I really didn't go for complete in-box games. It was hard to justify, with the rate being so much higher and the cost of just the cardboard and manual. So I really stuck to loose collecting. But a few years ago, I got a pretty decent sized Super Nintendo lot, all complete in box, and that really gave me an itch for complete in box collecting. And obviously you've seen from what I have. So a lot of these Super Nintendo games are games that I had prior to me complete in box collecting, or just getting decent lots off of people and adding to it. Normally though, I don't really try to add to the loose carts. I almost exclusively buy complete in box now, which makes it really hard for some games, like when you see like some of the Mega Man games or Haigani, stuff like that. I don't know if I'll see those in my collection because I don't know if I'll be able to justify those costs as well. A lot of these are duplicates now, just because I had a lot of these and then I purchased that big original Nintendo lot. So there's only a handful of these that are not duplicates. You go down to the N64 down there, those are some more duplicates. I actually don't mind having those because I'd rather utilize those and put the wear and tear in the box. And then Atari, I'm ashamed I only got like 2 or 3 games complete in box, and most of them are loose. That's a really fun system. And then Game Boy Advance down there, and Game Boy, all Pokemons, Sonic, Worms, Super RC Pro-Am was amazing for Game Boy. My Tech Mobile, signed by Peyton Manning. It absolutely makes no sense to have him sign it, but I had the opportunity to meet him, and I thought, you know, for giggles, I'll go ahead and have him sign it. So at the time he said he's never signed one, so maybe this is the only one in the world, as ridiculous as that sounds. I also picked up, right here I got a copy of Chippendale Rescue Rangers 2. I actually picked this up for $1 back in maybe 2011, so that was an excellent deal on that. At the time when I grabbed it though, I had no clue it had any value, and I think it was around a $60 game then, so I was more than happy to pick up a $60 game for $1.
Now this is an all Japanese Amiibo set, correct?
Yes, yeah. When these first came out, I was living in Europe, and they were asking about €15 each for these, which is about $18 at the time, so I gladly stayed away from the Amiibo craze. However, once I got here to Japan, I had a friend who was trying to get out of Amiibo collecting, and he had a pretty much near complete Amiibo collection, and I realized they were significantly easier to find than Amiibos here in Japan, so it didn't seem like it'd be a feat too hard to do. So that's what I've been after now. I bought his collection off of him, and then I've upgraded a handful of the boxes that weren't up to par for my collection, or the standards I like. And then I've been on top of it since. I haven't had really any issues. So right now you're looking at the complete Japanese collection till date. Over here you got the Kirby ones, and then you got all the Yoshi yarn ones. I love those things.
Here's all the newer Zelda ones.
Yep. And it branches down into the Breath of the Wild.
So you got some pretty cool pictures here. What is this all about?
So the Mega Man 2 was actually some fan art someone made online. That's the title screen for Mega Man 2. So if you ever play the game, it starts off down here and it scrolls up to obviously protagonist. And what's cool about this is you've never seen it in a full picture like that. So someone took this, and it's a real building, and then it had these buildings, and then miscolored it and all that just to kind of reflect it.
That's awesome.
And then down here there was a Capcom Live. It was actually, they were touring, and it was a rock concert that just played Capcom music. I managed to get this little tiny flyer insert, and then after the concert I managed to find one of the people and asked them for an unripped ticket, and you know, it has the date of the concert and everything. So because of that, they didn't mind giving me an unripped ticket. So I made this little plaque. I bought a couple of these little Capcom Live pins, and then had this whole little montage built just because I liked it that much. I really enjoyed that concert. Coming around the corner here, you have all these games and everything. These are just some random marketing and all that fun stuff. You got Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal. Lemmings is an amazing series. I mentioned earlier Twisted Metal 2, so some of these games right here are my all-time favorite games. So just utilizing this space and displaying some of my favorite games. A bunch of Vita games. I've even been doing a lot of limited run games. I don't know if you've heard of that site, but they do small print runs of games that probably would have never seen a physical release.
And you have all the ones to date, correct?
I have for the Vita, I'm missing Bleach and Clear, which is the hardest one to get, and then for the PlayStation 4 set, I'm missing the Saturday Morning RPG. But other than that, I have everyone till date. You have the Dreamcast collection, some other PS1 games that moved over here that don't have the artwork or anything, they're just loose disc. You got some Virtual Boy, a lot of Japanese ones, and a couple American ones. And then you have the Genesis, and then the Sega Master System, of course. This one's really cool because I remember this being announced at E3 many years ago, probably in 2009, 2010, whenever the game was announced. And then when it came out, they didn't have a collector's edition available, so I thought maybe they just canceled it. Fast forward a few years, I moved over to Europe, and I saw this in Italy, of all places. So I freaked out when I saw it, and I purchased it as soon as I saw it. And I've had it since. It's a really cool die-cast car of the driver.
And we're in a completely different room now.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, I have so many games I can't fit in one room. The sealed games continue on right here and end right here. And then we move over to PC. I really don't do much PC gaming. I'm not computer savvy, and anytime I have issues, I'm just kind of stuck. So I don't mess around with that too much. The PSP, probably my all-time favorite handheld. There's a lot of really great games on there. You got 3DS, Nintendo DS, and then this beast of a library, PlayStation 2. I have a few hundred PS2 games, and even then, I'm still missing tons of hidden gems in this system. Going to PS2, like messing around at the very end here, when the cases change blue and they got the white spines, these are the Pale Territory games. So one game, it's now probably my all-time favorite shooter, is called Tengai. At first I thought it was only released in Japan, but but in Europe, but after doing a little research, I found out that it's called Sengoku Ace here in Japan. Of course, you got original Xbox. That's another really great system. It doesn't get as much love as a PlayStation, but it has a special place in my heart. The Wii, I got a handful of games for the Wii, but I'm not really the biggest fan of the Wii. This one was really fun. Miramasa is a really good beat-em-up game. You got some more Worms games that I told you I love so much. GameCube was an excellent system that I'm seeing a lot of people get into now, but I remember when it was out, like not too many people cared for it, it seemed. It was all about that PlayStation 2. Small Wii U collection. But that's another system that I'm sure has a lot of hidden gems that I've overlooked.
With the GameCube, you used to work at GameStop, right? And you got a few copies of a pretty uncommon game, right?
So, one of the games I have, I think it's considered one of the rarest games on the system, is NCAA College Basketball 2K3. While they were printing these, Sega decided to cancel the 2K series on the GameCube. So whatever was printed is what was released. And then aside from that, no other ones went out. I don't know what the number is. I remember one time I saw a magic number saying like 2,000, but I don't think that's accurate at all. GameStop, for the longest, they would sell those for $4.99, even when the value was like a $60, $70 game. So anytime I came across one, I would snatch it up just because it was a good deal. Then going to your 360, this is, aside from the Super Nintendo, the 360 is probably my second favorite system of all time. This is the first system that you got to mess around online. I mean, not the first system, but it's the first system that I truly dived into online gameplay. I bought a modem, I even upgraded my TV to an HD TV for the first time. Like, this made so many big investments into the system, and it was well worth it. I had a lot of really good times with friends. PlayStation 3 was fun as well, but because the system came out a whole year after the 360, I already like established my friends list on 360 and everything. That's when I made the jump to Xbox, and I favor Xbox more than PlayStation nowadays. But they're both equally awesome.
These are all your in-box consoles.
Yep. There's, well, a lot of them are consoles. Then you have like light guns and other controllers and random accessories. Pretty much anything boxed, I try to put on these shelves. As you can see on the floor, clearly ran out of room, and that's becoming an issue in this house just due to its size. So there's some really cool stuff on here. You got a Virtual Boy complete in box. You got some Japanese Nintendo 64s. Got a, if you've ever heard of Steel Italian for original Xbox, yeah, one right there. That was really cool. Up above you have the PlayStation 2 neon light, an Xbox 360 neon light, and then you have a couple more Xbox neon lights over on the right hand side. They all work, I just don't have them plugged in at the moment. The GameStop I used to work at actually upgraded its PlayStation 2 kiosk. So when that happened, I spoke to my manager and I asked if I could take the old one, and she let me take it. The store unfortunately is closed down now, and so I'm really happy to have this from that particular store. It's like one of my memories from working at GameStop. I bought this probably about 4 years ago, but this really complements the kiosk really well. I have a room tour video as well, and this was actually on its way when I filmed that. I almost considered holding off and making it until this showed up. I probably spent over a year doing research to see if a PlayStation 2 floor mat even existed, and I couldn't find a single image on Google or anything. So on Facebook eventually something did pop up, and I jumped on it real quick and I purchased this.
Moving on to the Sega Saturn.
So this is where the Japanese collecting comes into play. As I mentioned, I've been here a little over 2 years now, so I've been really stacking up. And actually didn't know much about the Sega Saturn before coming here, and now it's probably one of my favorite systems to collect for out here. There's a lot of really good games for the system. Like this one, I don't even want to pronounce it, Batsugun, is a shoot 'em up game. It's really fun. Next to that is another really good shooter called Battle Garega, which I believe they just re-released in the PS4 in Japan. So if this one's out of your price range, they have I believe the same game just ported over to the PS4. It might be a little easier to get a hold of. This whole shelf right here is all just more Japanese games. Of like PC Engine, which is what we know in the States as a TurboGrafx 16. You have the Mega CD, which is your Sega CD, your Nintendo Dreamcast. And
Hold up, bro, you just said Nintendo Dreamcast.
Did I just, wow, the Nintendo Dreamcast. But yeah, you have the Sega Dreamcast, and then you move on to the Neo Geo, the PlayStation 1, GameCube, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy. The Game Boys are really cool because, you know, obviously, I love the original Pokemon games. So you got like the Pokemon Blue, Pokemon Green, which never left Japan. You got your red version. And then lastly, you got the yellow version, which is right here. So these were really fun to collect for. It took a little while to find these complete in box locally. I got some of my more high dollar games in these plastic cases for protection purposes, but some of the high dollar games I have are really fun. This one's called Captain Commando, and it's a arcade beat 'em up. The PS this was on Super Nintendo. You had a 2-player mode. The PS1 version, which was Japan exclusive, would let you do 3 players at one time. And then later on, they did like a Capcom collection for the PS2, like Capcom Reloaded, I believe was the name of it. And they introduced the actual arcade version on there, which is 4 players. So I highly recommend looking into that. I think it's only like $15 for the PS2 port. PC Engine, there's a lot of really good games on here. Pocky and Rocky for the PC Engine. I prefer the Super Nintendo one a lot better, actually. Castlevania Rondo of Blood, which we know this as Castlevania Draculax for the Super Nintendo in the States. This is the PC Engine is essentially the easiest way to look at it. If it's a disc-based game, it's like a Super Nintendo on crack. If it's like a cue card, which I'll give you an example of a Hue card. Like if it's a card like this, they're normally more Nintendo era graphics because the system came out in, I believe, the 80s. I don't know exact what year, so I'm not going to try to quote it.
You got Magical Chase too?
I do got a Magical Chase. The Magical Chase, this one is pretty sought after in the States. The American version is a lot rarer and a lot more expensive than the Japanese one. But this is a really cool shoot 'em up. The first time I played it on easy, and I only have 3 stages, so I thought the game was really short, but it turns out if you up the difficulty a little bit, that's when you get to actually go through and play the other stages. This one was really interesting. There's a Metal Wolf. The game's completely voiced over in English and everything. You see the American flag back here, and I think another country is essentially trying to take over America. So you're the president, and you get in a big mech, and you're fighting off like this enemy. Like the president's literally at war with this other people. So it's really crazy. A game never released in America. It only stayed here. I don't know why.
There's Mega Drive, the Japanese version of the Sega Genesis.
Yep. So there's some good ones on there. I like the different variation cover arts and stuff. Like recently I picked up the Sonic Spinball, which was a really fun game I played a lot as a kid. You got some decent games in here as well, like Splatterhouse Part 3. Some more shoot 'em ups. And the Mega Drive is really fun to collect.
And these are Famicom complete box?
Yep, the Famicom. So that's another one that has a lot of good games. You got the Castlevania right here. The Famicom. They kind of did a little weird because they hopped back and forth between cartridge and the Famicom disc system, which we'll show you here in a little bit. Kid Dracula. This is a really good game. We got this in the States just for the Game Boy I think it was just called Kid Dracula on the Game Boy. These are all Game Boy Advance, but they did pretty cool. This is their classic series. And they would take the Famicom box and make it small, and then they put the Game Boy Advance game inside of there. There was 30 of these in total released. I have almost a full set, but I'm still missing a couple of them, unfortunately, that I haven't came across. I think one of them is like the original Mario Brothers, just the battle mode one, and then I think Metroid I'm missing, if that's one of them. And then you got some more Game Boy games, so Turtles, Ninja Turtles, all of that. This was really cool. I didn't know this released. They had Gunstar Heroes for the Game Gear. So I picked that up recently. I'm really happy about that. This here's Legend of Zelda for the Famicom. On the actual Famicom itself console, the original model, the second player had a built-in mic, and there's a particular enemy in that game where their weakness is sound, so you could scream into the mic and all those characters on screen would explode and die. Splatterhouse, they had actually a Japanese version of that. It was also released out here. Which, your YouTube channel, you have a video of that, which is worth checking out if you guys want to know more about that. And then lastly for the Famicom, I think last, this exclusive Star Wars game that was out here. This got pretty big after the Angry Video Game Nerd showed this off. Then you go on, you got some PSP games, and then you have Super Famicom, and then you have some Famicom games. This is really cool. It's Far East of Eden, but this particular copy of this was given away as a prize for a magazine. I think it was Show Jump In or something like that. I can't remember the magazine, but they only did 200 copies of this for there, and they even edited it in the game where they added a building with their magazine company in it. So that's really cool.
Alright, moving on to the Super Famicom.
There's a lot of big heavy hitters in America right now that are, as I mentioned, out of my price range. However, I've seen the Japanese ones be a lot less money, so I don't mind buying the Japanese versions of some of these games.
Space Megaforce.
Yep, super. And that's another example of games that are a lot cheaper. I think Complete, I paid like 7,000 yen for that, which is around $70. Biometal, this one was probably the more pricier one in the set, but this is another shoot 'em up I really liked. And I don't know why, but it has a completely different licensed music soundtrack in the Japanese one, opposed to the American one.
Alright, so here is Japanese N64 complete in box.
Yep. So with the Japanese games, I do have some games that I have the American counterparts to, but there are a lot of Japanese exclusives. So I've been trying to pick up any Japanese exclusive I come across. I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to get the complete exclusive list of N64 games. I think there's only a little over 80 of them. And I think I have roughly around 50 of the exclusives right now, so I might still go that option, but I'm not sure. Now you're looking at the big box games. That's another subset I'm trying to get. I want to get all of the big box games that they have here. They had a lot more than we had in the States. And some really good ones like Perfect Dark.
Alright, so that's part one of game collectors around me in Japan. Tom, thanks for letting us check out your game room. You have a very huge collection. How many games?
Oh, I think it's around 5,200 games or something right now.
5,200.
It's growing. It's never ending.
So Tom, where can people find you at?
So there's a couple different places you can find me. I'm on YouTube at Tadpole1313. I'm also on Instagram as the same name. However, you got to replace the O in Tadpole as the number 0. Someone beat me to the punch and getting the Tadpole1313 name. And then lastly, on Facebook, I have a group called Video Game Collecting Community. On that page, I just post random gaming information or random news. And that's another good way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. And if you want a more in-depth game room tour of Tom's room, you can check that out on his channel. If you're not already, please subscribe. I'm Wayne, this is Tom, and thanks for watching.